My name is Jordan Ellis, and on a freezing Tuesday morning in Denver, I walked into the Jefferson County Courthouse with snow still melting on my jacket and a knot in my stomach so tight it felt like it had teeth. The marble floor echoed under my boots as I headed toward courtroom 3B, the room where my own brother and sister were trying to take everything my parents left me. Brady was already there, leaning back in the plaintiff's chair like he owned the place, one ankle crossed over his knee, a smug grin stretched across his face. He didn't even look at me. He smirked past me, like I was just a speed bump on the road to his victory. Sierra stood beside him, ring light clipped to her tablet, phone angled perfectly for her followers as she whispered, "Okay, guys, this is literally insane. Stay tuned." The case was formally called Ellis versus Ellis, contesting my parents' will, the one leaving Eagle Crest Lodge, and every dollar they saved after 30 years of breaking their backs to me. Not to my siblings, not to be split, to me, alone. When Judge Lucinda Hayes entered, the courtroom quieted instantly. She scanned the room, paused on Brady's expensive but probably maxed out suit, then let her gaze land on me. Something in her eyes softened just a little. "Miss Ellis," she said, "I hope you understand that what happens today may finally reveal who in this family has been telling the truth." Brady leaned forward, pretending to whisper, but loud enough for the first 2 rows to hear. "She's got nothing. She can barely afford rent. She isn't walking out of here with a dime." I didn't respond. I just placed my worn canvas medic bag on the defense table, unzipped it, and took out a thick folder. The folder that held everything they never expected me to keep. Evidence of every night, every emergency, every sacrifice. Evidence of who truly showed up when our parents' health collapsed. And before I go any further, if you've ever had your own family turn on you, especially over money or inheritance, tell me your story in the comments. I'm serious. No one understands that kind of pain unless they've lived it. And if you want to follow this entire journey, because trust me, it gets worse before it gets better, hit subscribe because I'm finally ready to tell the truth they spent years trying to bury. Back in the courtroom, Sierra lifted her phone again, whispering to her audience, "Watch her pretend to be the victim." But in that moment, standing under fluorescent lights, snow still clinging to my sleeves, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't pretending. I was finally fighting back. And none of them, not my brother, not my influencer sister, not even the judge, were prepared for what was inside that folder. People think the real story started in that courtroom, but it didn't. It started years earlier, back at Bear Creek, where the air always smelled like pine and the morning fog hugged the mountains like a blanket. That was home. That was where my parents, Dustin and Meredith Ellis, built Eagle Crest Lodge with their bare hands. Two people who believed that hard work solved everything and love was shown through the hours you put in. Growing up there meant waking to the sound of chainsaws in the distance, coffee brewing at 5 a.m., and guests stomping snow off their boots in winter. My parents didn't believe in days off. They believed in responsibility, in showing up even when it hurt. And I guess that's the part of them I inherited most. Brady didn't. Sierra didn't. They left before they were even old enough to appreciate what our parents built. Brady moved to Chicago first, announcing that Bear Creek was too small for someone with ambition. Sierra left a year later, chasing an influencer dream that required sunlit photos, perfect skin, and hashtags like "My Best Life." I stayed. I stayed because someone had to help with the lodge while finishing nursing school. And truthfully, I loved the mountains too much to leave. For a while, everything felt stable. Until the night my dad collapsed behind the lodge's front desk. I found him lying on the floor, hand clutching his chest, eyes confused and terrified. I dropped to my knees and checked his pulse. Rapid, irregular. A classic arrhythmia if I'd ever seen one.
I called 911, performing compressions until EMTs arrived. At the hospital, a doctor told me gently, "He needs long-term cardiac monitoring. He can't run the lodge alone anymore." That was the first blow. The second came 6 months later when my mom, who never complained a day in her life, sat at the kitchen table with shaking hands and said, "Jordan, something's wrong." She'd been bleeding for weeks, but hid it under baggy clothes and forced smiles. By the time we got her into a colonoscopy, the cancer was stage 3. I still remember sitting beside her bed after surgery, watching anesthesia wear off. She reached for my hand and whispered, "Please don't leave me to fight this alone." I didn't. I couldn't. I cut my shifts at Denver General. I drove her to chemo. I cooked bland meals she could keep down. When her hair came out in handfuls, I shaved her head for her while she cried quietly, staring at her reflection like she didn't recognize the woman she'd become. I wrapped a soft beanie around her head and told her she looked strong. She didn't believe me. Not then.
And where were Brady and Sierra during all this? Brady sent a single text every few weeks. "How is Mom?" No punctuation, no follow-up, no visit. Sierra mailed a care package with herbal teas and a lavender candle labeled Peaceful Energy. She filmed herself packing it on TikTok, smiling through perfect makeup and saying, "Family means everything to me." The video got 80,000 likes. The candle sat unopened on the nightstand until dust collected under the rim. My parents asked about my siblings constantly. When will they visit? Why haven't they called? And every time I tried to soften the truth. They're busy. Work is tough. They'll come soon. But deep down, we all knew they weren't coming. My dad started dialysis the winter Mom finished radiation. He hated the clinic. The cold chairs, the chemical smell, the endless whir of machines. So I learned to do home dialysis. I converted the guest room into a sterile space, studied every protocol, sanitized every surface. Each night at 10 p.m., I hooked him to the cycler. Some nights he was too swollen to speak. Some nights he winced through pain he tried to hide. I didn't post about it. I didn't broadcast it. I didn't ask for help. I just showed up. And every time I wondered if I was doing enough, my mom would rest her frail hand on mine and whisper, "You're the reason we're still here." She never said that about Brady. She never said that about Sierra. And maybe that's why they hated me so much when the will was finally read.
If caregiving taught me anything, it was how quiet real love is. But it also taught me how loud selfishness becomes when money enters the room. My mom passed first, just after sunrise, holding my hand as the mountains outside our window turned pale gold. My dad lasted 3 more months. By then, he was so weak I carried him from bed to chair like a child. He died on a cold March morning, breath fading with a soft rattle I'll never forget. I called Brady and Sierra, thinking maybe death would shake something awake in them. Brady answered with, "So what happens to the lodge now?" Sierra didn't answer at all. She went live on Instagram 10 minutes later, crying into her ring light, saying, "I just lost my mom, send prayers." Then she logged off and never called me back. 3 days after the second funeral, we met at Harper and Nash Legal Services, overlooking downtown Denver. The office smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. The executor opened a sealed envelope stamped with my father's handwriting, shaky but unmistakable. Inside was their final will. Everything, the lodge, the land, the accounts, was left to me. Not split, not shared, left only to me. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt numb because I knew the backlash was coming, like an avalanche hanging over a mountainside waiting for the slightest vibration. Brady's face tightened so fast
It was almost cartoonish. "You manipulated them," he snapped. "You kept us away so you could swoop in and take everything." Sierra crossed her arms, camera already angled upward for the perfect outraged thumbnail. "This is literally elder abuse," she said, shaking her head dramatically. "I can't believe she did this to us." "To you?" I whispered. "I was the one who—" But they weren't listening. They hadn't listened in years. That night, I heard knocking. Angry, frantic knocking that rattled the lodge's old wooden door. Brady pushed past me the moment I opened it, scanning the place like a real estate agent. "We need to renegotiate this will. 50-50. That's fair." Sierra entered right behind him, phone already recording. "My followers want transparency, so explain why you think you deserve all this." I set the USB of my dad's final recording on the coffee table. "Because Dad said so," I said quietly. Brady scoffed. "Audio can be faked." Sierra nodded, zooming in on my face. "You probably pressured him. You were alone with them all the time." That was the sentence that broke something in me. The hours I spent flushing dialysis lines, the nights I slept on a chair by the chemo bed, the mornings I carried my dad to the bathroom because his legs wouldn't hold him, the quiet moments when my mom whispered, "You're my rock." They erased all of that with one accusation. "Get out," I said. My voice didn't even crack, just sharpened. "Both of you." They left, but not before Sierra took pictures of the lodge interior, posting them hours later with the caption, "Fighting for what's rightfully ours. Pray for justice." And people did pray for them. Hundreds of comments poured in. "She's stealing from her siblings." "Greedy nurse exploiting her dying parents." "Team Sierra forever." Overnight, I became the villain in a story I lived every day. 3 days later, I was served in the Denver General parking garage. Brady and Sierra were officially suing me for undue influence, fraud, intentional isolation, emotional damage, and invalidation of the will. Their filed complaint said I manipulated my parents, restricted their access, and coerced them into signing. The photos attached? Images Sierra took during her justice tour. The proof they cited? Screenshots of me missing holiday gatherings because I was literally caring for our dying parents. As I sat on the curb between ambulance wails, reading every lie, one thought hit me like a punch. They didn't just want the money. They wanted to erase the truth. And for the first time, I felt something darker than sadness rising in my chest. Pure, righteous anger. The weeks after I was served felt like walking through wet cement. Every step heavy, every breath tight in my chest. I'd spent my whole life running into emergencies, stabilizing trauma victims, stitching together shattered bodies. But nothing in Denver General's training prepared me for what it felt like to be painted as a monster by my own family. The lawsuit hit the internet within hours. Sierra posted a teary-eyed video titled, "My Sister Stole Our Legacy," complete with soft piano music and a close-up of her mascara smudging perfectly down her cheeks. Within 24 hours, it had over 400,000 views. The comments were brutal. "Jordan's disgusting. She manipulated sick parents for money. Classic jealous sibling energy. I hope she gets sued for everything." Even at the hospital, a few coworkers whispered when I passed. Trauma nursing requires thick skin, but this wasn't the kind of pain you can shake off during a shift. It followed me everywhere. One night, I stepped into the supply closet to catch my breath after a 12-hour shift. I opened my phone and saw a notification, A gossip page posted Sierra's live stream, clipping accusing me of isolating our parents. My face was blurred, but everyone who knew me knew. I slid down the wall, burying my face in my hands. For the first time in my life, I felt ashamed of something I didn't do. My attorney, well, the attorney I wanted but couldn't afford yet, told me the case might take a year or more. Discovery, depositions, expert witnesses, medical record subpoenas. Brady and Sierra were demanding a complete invalidation of the will and punitive damages. They wanted not just the lodge, but everything I had saved. You'll need to prepare emotionally, the attorney warned. Sibling disputes get vicious. Vicious was an understatement. My siblings didn't stop at legal filings. Brady emailed Denver General's HR department claiming I stole narcotics from the medroom. I was pulled into a meeting, forced to defend myself against baseless accusations while my hands shook with anger. The hospital found no evidence, but the humiliation stayed. Sierra messaged my friends, telling them I was mentally unstable. Some didn't respond to her, some weren't so sure. After all, I'd been withdrawn lately, exhausted and jumpy. Trauma shifts and grief blend together in ugly ways. I couldn't blame them for wondering. My entire world was shrinking. Bills piled up, legal fees, property taxes, repairs to the lodge. The roof leaked, the boiler failed. I sold my old Subaru just to stay afloat. Every night I drove back to the lodge, its once welcoming lights dimmed, the hallways creaking like the house itself was grieving. One night after a particularly brutal shift where we lost a teenager in the trauma bay, I sat in my car outside the lodge, forehead pressed against the steering wheel. My chest tightened, not like grief, but like something inside me was collapsing. The thought hit me hard. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't deserve any of this. The guilt wasn't rational, but fatigue twists logic. Trauma nurses call this the tipping point, the moment when your body is awake but your spirit is dragging behind. I went inside, dropped my keys on the counter, and saw the old voicemail machine blinking. My dad refused to switch to a smartphone, so we still had the landline message system. I pressed play. His voice filled the room. "Jordan, thank you for staying. No matter what happens, you were the one who showed up." It broke me. I sank to the floor in the living room, the same room where Sierra had taken her photos for social media, and sobbed harder than I had in my entire adult life. Ugly, uncontrollable sobs that came from a place I didn't know existed. I wasn't crying because I was weak. I was crying because I had been strong for too long, because I felt alone, because the people who should have protected me were the ones tearing me apart. That night, I made myself a promise. If my siblings wanted a war, I would stop trying to survive it quietly. I would fight back. Not out of revenge, but because the truth deserved someone strong enough to carry it, even if that someone was barely holding herself together.
The morning after that breakdown on the living room floor, I woke up with my eyes swollen and my body heavy, but something in me felt different. Not healed, not strong, but steadier. Like the part of me that had been drowning finally kicked up enough to feel the surface. I stood in the quiet kitchen, poured a cup of black coffee, and stared out at the mountains turning pink with sunrise. My dad used to say, "You can let life run you over, or you can meet it head on." I finally understood what he meant. I couldn't keep letting Brady and Sierra define the narrative. If they wanted a fight, fine. But this time, I wasn't stepping into it broken. I was stepping in prepared. The first thing I did was pull out a storage bin from the closet, one I hadn't touched since my parents died. Inside were 2 thick binders Mom insisted we keep. Medical logs, dialysis charts, daily symptom journals, home visit records, insurance correspondence, and receipts, so many receipts, for medications, supplies, and groceries I bought with my own money. I sat at the dining table and organized everything chronologically, each paper a reminder of the nights I carried my dad to the bathroom, the mornings I held my mom's hand as she slept through chemo-induced nausea. Then at the bottom of the bin, I found something I didn't know existed. A faded envelope labeled in my dad's handwriting. For Jordan, if things get complicated. Inside was a USB drive. My heart sped up as I plugged it into my laptop. I expected numbers, maybe financial statements. It was a recording. My father's voice, weak but steady, filled the room. Jordan, if you're hearing this, it means your siblings are arguing over the will. I know them. I know how money blinds them. Please don't doubt yourself. Meredith and I always planned for you to have the lodge. You stayed. You sacrificed. You saved us more times than you'll ever admit. This is our decision, not something anyone forced. He paused, his breathing shaky. Use this only if you must. And if you do, know we loved you enough to choose what was right, not what was easy. I played it 3 times, letting every word carve itself into my spine. My dad wasn't poetic. He wasn't dramatic. He was honest. And honesty hits harder than any scripted speech. After that, things clicked into place. Step 1, gather witnesses. I contacted Dr. Patel, Mom's oncologist. He remembered me sitting through every visit and signed a declaration about how rarely Brady and Sierra appeared. I found the hospice nurse who cared for my dad in his final week. She wrote a statement confirming I was the only child present and that my parents were mentally competent when they discussed end-of-life wishes. Step 2, reveal the truth about the siblings. I dug into public records, something I'd never bothered to do. Brady had 2 pending credit card lawsuits, a gambling marker in Nevada, and a terminated employment contract for ethical violations. Sierra had 3 brand deals suspended for misrepresentation and unpaid taxes on sponsored trips. Their motives weren't just selfish, they were desperate. Step 3, rebuild my own strength. I forced myself to take days off, went on walks, slept 8 hours for the first time in months, started journaling, not about pain, but about clarity. I talked to the attorney again, this time with evidence in hand and resolve in my voice. He looked at the stack and nodded. Jordan, this is ironclad. They're not going to win. For the first time since the lawsuit began, I believed him. Step 4, walk into court as the person my parents raised, not apologizing, not shrinking, not letting grief make me small. I was done defending myself for loving my parents more than my siblings did. The day before the first hearing, I placed Dad's recording back into the envelope and whispered, "Tomorrow, Dad, I'll use it tomorrow." And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Not soft, fragile hope, but sharp, grounded hope. A kind that felt like armor. Because this wasn't about the lodge anymore. It was about the truth, and I was finally ready to fight for it. The courthouse felt different on the morning of the hearing. Brighter, somehow. As if even the sun wanted to watch what was about to unfold. I walked through the glass doors with my evidence neatly packed in a binder, Dad's recording tucked safely inside. My hands weren't shaking this time. My breathing was steady. I finally felt like I wasn't walking in alone.
Brady and Sierra arrived minutes later, flanked by their attorney, a man who looked like he charged by the breath. Brady was in another too expensive suit, clearly bought on credit. Sierra strutted behind him wearing oversized sunglasses and a blazer she probably planned to make a courtroom fashion TikTok about. She lifted her phone the moment she saw me. Oh my God, she looks nervous. Guys, this is going to be wild. Her live chat exploded with heart emojis and "get her" comments. Judge Hayes entered promptly at 10 a.m. Court is now in session. Brady went first. He stood, straightened his tie, and tried to project confidence. "Your Honor," he began, "my sister isolated our parents during their final months and manipulated them into leaving the entire estate to her. We have reason to believe she used undue influence." He spoke like a salesman giving a pitch he didn't fully understand, cycling through buzzwords he probably Googled the night before. Sierra nodded dramatically beside him, whispering commentary to her mic. Their attorney produced blurry photos Sierra had taken inside the lodge, photos meant to prove I controlled access and prevented them from visiting. He showed screenshots of texts Brady sent me that I'd never answered, conveniently ignoring that I'd been in the middle of performing trauma care during those times. When they finished, Judge Hayes turned to me. "Ms. Ellis, you may present your evidence." I stood slowly, walked to the front, and set my binder on the podium. In the trauma bay, truth has weight. You can feel it when it hits. This courtroom wasn't any different. I started with the basics. Hospital bills I paid out of pocket, dialysis charts, chemo schedules, home health instructions, visitor logs, my work schedule showing every hour I left early to take them to appointments. Then I played the voicemail Mom left me the month before she died, the one where her voice cracked as she said, "Thank you for not letting me do this alone." You could hear a pin drop. Next, I handed the judge the hospice nurse's declaration, confirming she never once saw Brady or Sierra at Dad's bedside. Dr. Patel's signed statement showing they attended only 2 medical appointments between them in 2 years. Their attorney objected. "Irrelevant emotional manipulation." Judge Hayes lifted a hand. "It is absolutely relevant. Sit down." Then came the part I dreaded, but knew I needed. I pressed play on the USB. My dad's frail voice filled the courtroom speakers. "If you're hearing this, it means your siblings are contesting the will. Jordan, this is our decision. You didn't force anything. You carried us. You loved us. This is what we wanted." Sierra's jaw dropped. Brady paled. Their lawyer rubbed his temples. Brady jumped to his feet. "That recording could be fake." Judge Hayes glared at him. "Sir, sit down now." I continued. Next slide. Brady's financial records, all public information. His gambling debts, his credit card lawsuits, his 2 failed brokerage jobs, the foreclosure notice filed 6 weeks before the lawsuit. The timeline was undeniable. He sued me because he was drowning in debt. Then I pulled up Sierra's emails from brand partners, messages stating they suspended her contracts due to her public involvement in a family legal dispute, her tax liens, her unpaid sponsorships. She sued me because her influencer career was collapsing and she needed a storyline. The room buzzed with murmurs. Finally, I looked directly at the judge. My parents weren't confused. They weren't manipulated. They made a choice, and I honored it while my siblings weaponized grief for money, attention, and followers. Sierra slammed her hand on the table. "She's lying. I'm the victim here." Judge Hayes slammed her gavel. "Enough." The room went silent. She shuffled through the documents for a long moment, then looked up. "This court finds the will valid and executed with full capacity. The plaintiff's claims are not only unsupported, they are borderline malicious. Judgment is granted to the defendant, Ms. Jordan Ellis. Additionally, Brady and Sierra Ellis are ordered to pay the defendant's legal fees and sanctions totaling $92,000, due within 60 days. Sierra gasped like someone had slapped her. Brady's mouth hung open. It was over. Just like that. But justice didn't end in the courtroom. 3 weeks later, Brady's luxury SUV was repossessed, captured by security cameras as he shouted at the tow truck driver. His apartment in Chicago was seized next. Word spread through his former brokerage network, and no firm would touch him. He moved into a cramped studio with peeling paint above a vape shop. Sierra's downfall unfolded even faster. Her followers turned on her after the court ruling leaked. Her sponsorships evaporated. Her apology video got 112 views before she deleted it. She moved back to Colorado, posting vague quotes about starting over before quietly disappearing online. Watching them fall wasn't joyful, but it was justice. And justice, when it's earned, not stolen, feels like breathing after being underwater too long.
When the court clerk handed me the final judgment papers, I didn't feel triumphant the way people expect in stories like this. There was no victorious soundtrack playing in my head, no dramatic walkout into the sunshine. What I felt was quieter, something like exhaling after holding my breath for months. I drove back to Eagle Crest Lodge that afternoon. The snow had started melting along the path, exposing patches of dirt and pine needles. The porch creaked under my boots the same way it did when Dad carried firewood inside. Inside, sunlight poured across the wooden floor, dust floating like tiny memories suspended in the warm air. For the first time in a long time, the lodge didn't feel heavy. It felt like home again. I spent the next few weeks repairing what grief and chaos had broken, replacing the boiler, fixing the roof leaks, repainting the front hall. Slow work, honest work, work my parents would have been proud of. Then something unexpected happened. Families in town, people who used to stay at the lodge when their kids were little, began stopping by. Some brought casseroles, some brought stories, some just brought hugs. One mother, whose child I treated in the trauma bay years ago, placed her hand over mine and said, "Your parents raised a good one." I didn't cry then, but I did later, alone, sitting on the back deck with the mountains spread out in front of me. Eventually, I made a decision. The lodge would stay open, not as a tourist hotspot, not as a profit machine, but as a small recovery retreat for families dealing with medical hardship, a place where people could breathe again, a place where love lived louder than fear. I filed for nonprofit status, named it the Ellis Respite Program, and used part of the trust my parents left to fund its first year. The first family we hosted had a daughter recovering from spinal surgery. Watching her laugh in the snow outside the lodge, it made everything feel worth it. As for Brady and Sierra, I didn't hear from them often. Brady sent a certified letter asking for one last conversation. I returned it unread. Sierra posted a vague, taking accountability video that got less engagement than a grocery haul clip she filmed years ago. Eventually, she deleted her entire profile and faded into a quiet corner of the internet. I don't hate them. I don't wish them harm. But I also don't owe them space in my life. Because family isn't the people who hurt you and demand forgiveness. Family is the people who show up, the ones who hold your hand through chemo, the ones who sit with you through dialysis, the ones who stay, not because they're obligated, but because love is a choice they make every single day. So if you're still listening, thank you for hearing my story. And if you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you, drop your experience in the comments. Your truth deserves to be heard just as much as mine.